Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Strickland and I do my research on the global trends that exist within sex trafficking. And so I've titled my research Bot, Discovering the Global Trends that Exist Within Sex Trafficking. So basically the problem that I'll be talking about is that sex trafficking and the issue of forced sex workers is an issue that has rocked the United States for ages. Sex trafficking has come to be more than coerced prostitution, and it's actually come to be a massive problem domestically as well as internationally. And so this includes the exploitation of humans for forced or coerced sexual acts. The deficiency statement is basically just that, however, this issue is more than just local or national, it is in fact a global problem. And so with this, the purpose statement of my research will be that this research explores the recent trends that exist within the sex trafficking industry, and then the nature and extent of exploitation for each victim. So henceforth, this investigation will present the trends that exist within sex trafficking globally. This study tends to be significant just because given the uprise in immigration, illegal immigrants, and heightened awareness, the conversation of sex trafficking on a global outlook has become to be an increasingly relevant topic. Whereas 5 years ago, sex trafficking was not heard of as often as it is today. So just an increased awareness of the issue in general, but then also with that, the American population still seem largely unaware of the global trends and impacts that sex trafficking have. And so furthermore, with this, the prevalence of American women being trafficked in the public face of sex trafficking in the US specifically has made the topic more prevalent than ever before as well. So therefore, due to all of these things, it is important to trace and address the global trends that exist within sex trafficking. My review of literature will review and analyze the following things pretty generally, but also in some detail as well. And so there will also be some theoretical models of sex trafficking included in my review of literature, as well as some definitions, some basic research and data on the industry itself, just to provide some background. But it will review the Palermo Protocol and its critiques, how sex trafficking is manifested in its effects, and then also prostitution in relation to sex trafficking. So the theories here is basically just that it's been theorized through the researching the trends that exist within the sex trafficking industry globally. One will find a variety of variables, and then through this, we will be able to discover many unknown links between sex trafficking and like global trends that have existed and continue to exist even today. And so there are hundreds upon hundreds of variables, but my research will just look at merely 16. And so basically we'll just link the unknown links and then the global trends of the sex trafficking industry as a global commerce. So here's just some general research about the trends of sex trafficking as a whole. Annually, there's about 800,000 people trafficked across international borders, with 80% of this number being women and children, and nearly half being minors. So this number just looks at human trafficking in general. And so this 800,000 is generally just referring to the 800,000 that are trafficked across international borders annually. And then with this, what is known as the global sex trade specifically is the fastest growing form of commerce that exists today, with a profit of nearly $32 billion annually, which is astronomical. So the hypothesis that I'll be looking at will specifically state that this industry will be researched thoroughly, and my research will find and make global connections found examined through the variables that I will examine. So I will ask, what are the global trends that exist within sex trafficking? How are these trends consistent and correlated among nations? What are the definitions of sex trafficking? What are some of the main general theories that exist about it? And then through this, there will emerge a series of global trends that exist globally rather than just nationally and within our local borders. So basically, creating ties between this industry globally, not just within the US and Mexico, or just the US, or even just within the states of the US, but rather also looking at on a national scale how all of these are connected. So data comes from the IOM data set, the Polaris data set, and then as well as some from Liberty Asia. This data came from the 2017 counter trafficking data, and the data consists of information on identified and reported human trafficking. And so my data will review 16 different variables, and then these variables have captured information on a variety of things for over 50,000 victims of sex trafficking. So I think mine will look at around 56,000 victims. And so this first table that we can see here is just a summary of my variables. So it's broken down by sex, so basically by variables, and then sex and age, and then the frequency with which that occurs. And then the next table basically shows the same thing, but some of my variables include psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychoactive substances, threats, false promises, and then these are all means of control. And so this basically summary variables will look at these means of controls and then their frequency and percentages spread throughout my research, and how these basically how sexual abuse as a means of control versus withholding documents as a means of control, just those the frequency with which that occurs, as well as the percentage. So my data analysis, basically, here's kind of a picture, a pie chart of the citizenship, and so you can kind of see this large teal area that you see is Southeast Asia, and then the red part is Eastern Europe, and then the other large tan part is unknown. So due to the nature of my research, a lot of our variables were unknown, but as far as citizenship goes, this is where you can kind of see. And actually the other decent sized portion is actually North America. So my data we used the chi-square analysis. And so chi-square is a statistic that's often used for testing relationships between categorical variables. And so Penn State states it this way, that the chi-square test is intended to test how likely it is that an observed distribution is due to chance. It is also called goodness of fit statistic because it measures how well the observed distribution of data fits with the distribution that is expected if the variables are independent. So basically, chi-square test is designed to analyze categorical data, and this means that the data has been counted and divided into categories. So now we will move on to my results section of my research, which is shown through the second table, which is basically just an exemplification of the chi-square analysis of sex trafficking. This one is specifically the trends by region, sex, and age with types of exploitation. So you'll look at, on the far left, types of exploitation. So there's pornography, prostitution, internet, and private sexual services. And then each of those by regions, age, and sex. And so what this data shows is that all of our findings were significant for this table. This is just the second part of the table as well, because I couldn't fit it all into the first slide. But this, as stated before, is the chi-square analysis of sex trafficking trends. This one, however, is the trends for means of control, also looking at region, sex, and age. And so basically, if you look at means of control as psychological abuse, parts of law enforcement, restricting basic necessities, sexual abuse, etc., by for each victims or each statistics variable, region, sex, and age, we also found that they were highly significant. So basically, the findings of my research discovered that all of the variables were significant in my research, and so that this means for me and for this research that I've done, that there are significant connections between the victims of human trafficking and their region, sex, and age. And it was, in addition, it was discovered that there was significant findings in relation to the means of control and types of exploitation as well, in relation to one's region, sex, and age. So, and then there's my references. So, yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that this proves helpful.